And you saw the Maul usage, just like kind of like Void Prison for the zoning to trap all the supports in there so they could focus all the other targets. Do you think we'll see Zagara coming in? Possibly.
Well, if it was the old TNL, then
Yes.
I would always open the possibility of Sniper picking Zagara because he was such a god on that hero. This was, of course, before the rework, so it was a very different hero than what she is now. But overall, L5, there's a reason why they picked Sky Temple. They absolutely love this map. They were even stronger on this map when the Hunt Illidan was a thing. It's not so much anymore because the cooldown got nerfed from 60 seconds to 100 seconds, so it's not as always up anymore. But I believe that L5 will still definitely take Illidan if the situation seems right, because Jungha is such a good player on the Illidan. And Tempest decide to mix it up immediately. Yeah, I think this is a great adaptation.
That's what I wanted to see even before coming into OGN tonight. I knew that L5's priority is Tyrael, so Tempest, of course, has to know that. I was even thinking of maybe there will be a Tyrael ban coming out, but instead, because they have the first pick after losing game 1, they will take it away from L5's. And now, is Hooligan just going back? Is he just planning on going back to his old favorite ETC here?
I believe we will probably see an ETC in this first rotation. I don't know how happy L5 will be about it because, you know, generally you would want to save the warrior pick for later if your main tank had a wider hero pool, but that's not really the case for Hooligan. So they will think twice before deciding to pass up on ETC in this rotation. And speaking about Tyrael, Sign's Tyrael is a bit give and take. I mean, when he's on point, his sanctifications are absolutely godlike, even prescient. It's like he's seeing 3 seconds into the future and using sanctification before all the enemy's skills hit.
Well, if you... Well, not to take it down, but if you use sanctification 3 seconds before the future happens,
okay, maybe not 3 seconds. Okay, so maybe a bit less than 3 seconds. But the point is there. But
there'll be lots of question marks in the chat.
Yeah, but when he's on, he's on. But when Sign is off, he starts throwing games outright on Tyrael, so he will have to be careful. And Lucio, we mentioned before, even before going into the Game 1 draft, that Swoi's Lucio wasn't that great at all, whereas Honkano, probably his best hero right now is Lucio. He's undefeated on Lucio, 4-0 in recent weeks. So, very interesting from L5. Both of these teams are taking away each other's favored picks right now. Tempest has taken away Tyrael from L5. L5 did the same with Lucio. And the response, I feel, will be a double... Okay, so not a double support. I'm glad they gave up on that idea. And Greymane. Greymane also can be explained as a bit of a takeaway because L5 has a much higher priority for Greymane compared to Tempest. L5 pick it in nearly half their games and pretty much whenever he is available compared to Tempest, who has sort of been on the board about Greymane as a whole. Uther, though, is a very standard, usual pickup, so not too much crazy stuff going on in the first half of the draft.
L5, especially against a weaker team, they just picked up Hyper Carry Greymane, and with their teamwork and individual skills, they just ripped the other teams apart. With a similar draft, and now I do feel like it's a very reversed draft coming out. L5 just picking Lucio, ETC, even considering banning a Johanna here, as Johanna can provide some extra wave clear, along with it's a pretty good counter against the ETC too.
I believe that the most logical ban here would have been an Abathur actually, but the Iona ban rather, is something that wasn't really readily expected. So I feel that L5 is trying to mind game Tempest here through this Iona ban. They are trying to pose as if they are going to pick a very heavily auto-attack centric hyper carry, I feel, and that's forcing Tempest to respond. So probably L5 will hide their assassin pick until the last rotation. So I feel that's the way this draft is going to go. Tempest will probably be thinking whether to play into the mind game or not, because they obviously know that the Iona ban is a mind game. That could go either way.
So of course, without any DPS, there are lots, and L5 did pick lots of Vala in Sky Temple. Had Q, even with a Genji there, had Q poking, doing some damage to burst it down, and Genji just picking up the kill with the resets.
Not so sure about this Rehgar ban, actually.
Me neither. Maybe L5 is thinking that they will again come in with a dive comp Genji, or even an Illidan, as you mentioned. I think that they're just taking the support away so they have a less chance of diving in.
So I think what is happening with Tempest's ban is that they are trying to pose as if they are going for a dive composition, as you said, and they very well can go for a dive composition. They already have Tyrael and Greymane, and by taking Uther and banning out Rehgar, they have effectively threatened you either have to take Cleanse or something like a pseudo cleanse, or you're going to have problems later on dealing with her dive. But L5 don't respect that at all, don't take Brightwing or anything like that, and just go for the Tassadar Sonya. So a high priority is seen for Sonya in this game, I feel, and Jungha has always been a great Sonya player, so I feel that the Sonya pick works in both ways. If piloted well, it can deal well with dive compositions, and it also serves as a deterrent, a sub-deterrent to Genji in a way, because Jungha has always been a fan of using Sonya to deal with opposing Genjis. So a lot of intentions that can't be seen on screen but can be thought out going on in the draft here.
I feel like Sonya is not the only one for their damage though. They are bidding into this. Are they going to pick Vala, Lunara, or even Tracer? What are they thinking? I think that's exactly what's going on in Hyde's mind right now, as Tempest has the last two remaining picks. It's gonna be Genji Dehaka to counter whatever is going to come in. They have Genji and Dehaka together, bringing that isolation on in their hands too.
So as expected, Tempest going for the dive composition, and so L5 Sonya pickup was proven to be prescient. Very nice drafting by both sides so far. I'm also a fan of this Dehaka as well. I believe they were considering Abathur and Dehaka, or Falstad, I guess. I mean, if they were Fnatic, then they very well could have gone for something like Falstad and just played that composition, but Tempest isn't really a fan of that kind of style. So I believe Dehaka was a very decent pickup. And L5, as we talked about, saving their ranged assassin, their main DPS for last, and it's Vala, which validates retrospectively the Yuana ban. So overall, very well thought out draft by both sides, I think. There's not a single pick here that I really disagree with. So it should make for a great game. Both teams want to do different things as well. Tempest will definitely be looking to abuse the global mobility advantage granted by Dehaka, whereas L5 will be the stronger side in team fights.
Well, we'll see as we go into Sky Temple, as players are loading into the game. As both sides are very balanced draft, I feel like, of course, the winner may not be decided. It will be decided after game 2 and 3. Let's go into Sky Temple game number 2. In blue, L5. Hooligan on ETC, SCSC on Vala, Jungha on Sonya SDE on Tassadar, and Swoi on Lucio.
And in the red, we see Tempest with Hyde on Uther, Honkana on Greymane, Lockdown on Genji, Sign on Tyrael, and H82 on Dehaka.
Let's see, it is Q Vala coming out with Sonya has taking block for the strong solo lane. There's a drag already. Insta-shielded onto Swoi.
Could have been a bit dangerous for H82 there. Not so much going on, and it seems like the standard 4-1 swap won't happen this game, which should make for a less boring early game. I'm not a fan of the 4-1 swaps that are so standard in professional play nowadays.
4-1, push it forward on the other side. Let's see which one goes faster. But Jungha goes very low, and Swoi comes a second too late here. Maybe he didn't really expect Genji to appear there. Maybe he was just contesting against the Dehaka for a moment.
Pretty nice opening from Tempest, really, and Sonya, despite taking block, will fall to the very early gank.
I think that's a very good start for Dehaka, especially as you will have a tough time against solo laning Sonya on the other side. Genji will have to... Actually, Dehaka joins the bottom and tries to get another... That tongue was long.
A lot of early game mistakes coming out from L5 sides here, and the Sonya first def was okay, I think, but this def sort of screws up their entire early game rotations plans. Not entirely sure what is the reason for this breakdown in communication, but not too much going on so far from Tempest sides to abuse that momentary advantage, so it should be okay. But Dehaka will gain access to Brush Stalker pretty soon.
I think it could have been a much harder lane, especially the top lane, which they just basically gave up and they're just doing wave clear instead. For Tempest, I mean. It could have been a harder time for Dehaka, so actually going down, getting a kill. Meanwhile, Dehaka could have been doing nothing, just soaking in the XP. I like this choice from Tempest, as they don't like to have Snowball onto the other side.
Swoy with the heroic taking the tongue instead of Sonya. So, pretty nice play there. Of course, I think he could have just let Dehaka tongue Sonya, then just booped him out immediately, so it would have been the same thing without him losing as much HP. But whatever. Still a nice play. Glad to see some sacrificial action.
That's support for you. And sometimes you do need to sacrifice for your DPS as a support player, as sad as it sounds.
Taking the tongue.
Yes, and we'll see crowd surfer from ETC. Maybe we'll see Force Wall coming out. I think that's an idea here.
Not sure if feature or bug, but Crowd Surfer does allow you to slide at faster speeds right now, so it's pretty much of a standard pickup even when there isn't a Tyrael on the other side. And when there's a Tyrael on the other side, when Tyrael takes Holy Ground, you probably want Crowd Surfers to go over that, so overall standard talent choice from ETC, I would say. Focused attack on Sonya, as you said. Pretty interesting, but Jung has always gone for talent builds more focused on the spear and auto attacks and just being in the fray and trusting his own mechanics in the moment rather than just relying on the whirlwind. So I think it's pretty characteristic of Jung to take that talent as well.
Even when first Genji arrived into the Nexus, some Korean teams were saying Sonya is a very good counter against Genji. When Genji dives in, Sonya actually does a lot more burst damage, so Genji has to escape or die there. That's what they have been saying. I think we may see a similar thing happening, especially with Jung on the Sonya. After watching Game 1, he was focusing the DPS so hard. The Poison Spear, the spear landed on the DPS every single time, which just forced out a Divine Shield like that. Is it going to continue? I think it's very likely. The very likely answer is yes.
And as you mentioned, the dynamic between Genji and Sonya in teamfights is pretty interesting because if you remember, but Dehaka comes in with the Brush Stalker, Sonya is quite a bit away.
That could have been the perfect timing for a mosh pit there, but no mosh pit yet as there are still 7.
Cute little boombox there. As usual, Swoy almost always seems to take that talent.
Nice.
Good shift.
Shift away right before Genji comes in. Sign is onto the other side, but Hooligan is also caught taking some damage as Jungha is alone in that temple, so Swoy comes in to harass a little bit for the zoning.
He will need to maintain his HP at a higher level for now, but that was really masterfully played by Sign. If you guys want to know what kind of Tyrael play you should be doing in teamfight. But a really nice spear onto lockdown.
Nice trade, but they will make it one more. With Tyrael going down.
So close.
Barely survived that. Extra boom box. Provide some more heals with Swoy.
Really well played by Jungha there, landing those spears like a boss.
I think he knew he was going to die, but he wanted to at least get the trade in there. And as you saw, if Genji is caught like that, Genji will die just like that after a spear. I think Poison Spear does a lot of damage. Of course, it's damage over time, poison. But Sonya landing on those spears is critical in every single team fight.
I mean, Q auto, W auto, the damage from that, especially with focused attack, pretty crazy once you land that entire thing. And as you said, the exchange, if you exchange Sonya for Genji in this particular battle of the compositions, then I would generally say that L5 would benefit from it simply because Tempest need the burst damage from Genji to take down the double support healing from L5. So that's something they would want to do. But as I was saying, if... Oh god. Talking about burst damage, man. Oops. SCSC, this is his second mistake in the game. Both of them happened in the bottom lane.
Well, that's because of Judgment locked in from the other side, providing extra CC. You have to pop the sound barrier here too. Another drag on to Jungha.
Oops.
May actually be enough. And that's spearing a minion. Of course, it's hard to land on every single damage.
That would have looked very different had he hit the spear,
yes.
But I guess that's what happens. That's exactly what happens in the Sonya Genji dynamic. You either hit the spear and win, or miss the spear and lose. Jungha and Lockdown are 1-1 in that regard, I guess.
The second one sounds like my Sonya when I play Sonya all the times.
Oh god. But as you mentioned, the Judgment pickup from Sign, very smart on his part, and this was something that we were also talking about before in the draft as well, because when they banned Rehgar, they were taking away the last support with Cleanse that was really meta. Of course, Lili and Brightwing are still there, but both of them aren't quite in the meta as much as Rehgar. So Tempest was threatening that we're going to pick a dive comp and use Judgment if you don't take a support with Cleanse. But L5 said, no, we're just going to take Valitacidar, stuff like that instead. So both of these teams are playing their composition exactly as intended, and it's great to watch a game like that.
Yeah, without Cleanse, we'll be lacking the supportive. May have to drop down the sound barrier for a single ally, and I don't think Lucio will be very happy with that for sure. But on the other side, Mosh Pit threat is real because Tempest also does not have too many CC for themselves.
Oh, misses the slide.
It was close. But because of that Hooligan, I think we'll have an easier time locking in multiple heroes in that Mosh Pit and to start dancing. Not alone this time. We saw lots of crazy moshes happening last night, but I don't think it'll be similar tonight.
The lack of Xantification, though, could allow for some funky moments, since Tongue and Uther Z is the only things that can really cut that off, and both of them are pretty melee, so very possible that they all get caught in the fray, as you said. Sign being extremely aggressive with the Q, but since most of L5 were revealed on the map, I guess that Q is justified. Pressing Q immediately to waltz into that camp, though, was not as much expected.
As you said, I think Sanctification is, of course, the obvious pair with Greymane, and even more with Genji because it is a dive comp.
I mean, it goes both ways, right? You either dive harder or defend your dive after you go in. Not sure how to describe that in concise words, but
see. I think Tempest needs to find picks, though, if they chose this. Just like what they did with Bala at the bottom lane. So they're going in here as they are changing the momentum a little bit. Gonna push into the fort. Sonya is still on top. Deaka can join into the team fight anytime.
And this is something that we've been actually talking about, that Tempest can't quite match the rotations coming out from L5, and macro play on the whole is not Tempest's strong suit at all. So despite having the global mobility advantage in the Haka, they're actually behind in experience, which is something that you don't expect to see when you see these two team compositions on either side. But I don't know. generally speaking, Tempest has always had a problem utilizing global mobility outside of joining a team fight for a 5v5 because the person calling all the rotational shots is usually a Hyde or Sign, which are not people that are piloting those heroes with global mobility. Generally, when you have a Falstad or a Dehaka or something like that on your team, then you want that person to be calling the rotational shots. But Tempest has never worked like that, except for when Lockdown played Falstad.
That's right, that was the only time. I think he was just called when he was coming for the flight for the gust angle from the other side oftentimes. And that was it. Other than that, they had not much use of globals, especially with the Haka or any Brightwing. Rarely, but sometimes. Still winning the EXP because the Haka has been soaking, and there will be a trade with the middle temple here with the Sonya and EXP. ETC, not EXP.
Both teams happy to just exchange temples like that. I don't think a team fight will break out anytime soon, considering how careful both sides have been. L5 is doing a great job, I would say, generally not giving any angles, but Lucio
goes in with the dive. Does not have a time for the sound barrier.
Oh, the caster curse is real. They've been doing a good job avoiding those judgment engages until the exact moment I decide to mention it, right? The moment that Lucio peeked his head out of that bush, he was done.
Even the wall ride was not enough, and you do need some time to actually channel that sound barrier, and he didn't even commit to it. He knew he was dead the moment he stepped over that line. And just with those few picks, they will get the boss too. And this bottom push will actually be close to a keep if L5 does not clear the other ones.
I think L5 has a very good chance of defending this without losing too much, mostly because Tempest don't have access to any of their heroics save Divine Shield, whereas L5 didn't really get to use any of theirs in the teamfight prior. Wasn't even a teamfight, they just lost Lucio and backed off, wisely, I think. So, overall, L5, nice decision to back off right after losing the Lucio. Tempest, similarly, I think, made the right decision to not push it with the boss, since they are very reliant on their heroics, after all, in making these dive engages. One temple opens up, though. So
against the dive engages, what is a good answer for L5 right now? Do you think having an ETC in the middle of the team and providing the power slide and actually trying to counter that mosh pit, that's the only one that I can think of at the moment.
I think generally it's just a battle between Tyrael and Lucio, and the positioning of those two heroes will be absolutely key, because if Lucio gets hit by Judgment, there's absolutely nothing that they can save him with, save for ETC just immediately pressing R right next to Lucio once Tyrael goes in. So we could see that happening, definitely. Hooligan is smart enough a player to do that, but more importantly, Swoy shouldn't try to test his luck.
Tempest is forcing them inside the temple here as they are around the entrance and the bushes here. Just to drag on to Sonya. We get shield, but there is the mosh, but it's cancelled by the shield. Judgment cancels the mosh. So HGC then Kono is very low. Genji already blew up, but Sonya will be traded. All the damage lost for Tempest. Archon is still doing tons of damage, and Hooligan's on to the chase. Vala is doing free damage here.
Tempest lost that teamfight as soon as Sign decided to use Judgment on the Dancing Cow. That was completely unnecessary. Divine Shield had already gone on to the only person that was in the mosh pit.
That's right.
So it was a complete waste of Judgment. And remember, you can't really burst down an ETC when it's a double support composition, especially when a lot of your heroics have been used otherwise. So overall, I think L5 was actually looking to lose that teamfight because the mosh missed so heavily, but the immediate Divine Shield response was very odd. The Judgment into the Dancing Cow was even more odd.
Well, that was his job. It's my job to cancel the mosh, so I have to go in, but
no,
why am I going in?
Not.
No,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely not. So, very disappointing execution. Use of abilities by Tempest there, but the game is hardly over. All of their keeps are up. They will probably hit 20 by the time that the next team fight rolls around unless they get caught out. So Tempest will probably have to try to learn from their recent mistake. And it's a very trivial mistake. I'm sure that Sign just had a momentary lapse of judgment there. So I don't think we'll be seeing that again.
But they have a good window coming back. L5 did hit 20 first, but they do need to wait for the cooldowns to come back online. So, and Tempest do have all the keeps alive. That's the important thing. They also have the global, and L5 is trying to punish, trying to pressure a little bit here because they have the advantage right now. Can H82 survive? And blinks in Hooligan. Target is on to Greymane. Survives with the Divine Shield. I don't think they're going to stop there.
Really nice attempt from Hooligan, I would say. It didn't go as well as planned, but the idea was correct, and they also took out the Divine Shield. So that will effectively gimp their team fights in a way for the next minute or so, even though they will hit 20. So that's definitely a thing. Dahaka moving into the bottom lane to clear out the pushing Siege Giants, which he will be able to do with impunity.
Well, we'll see now. Tempest caught up in 20. I think he was kind of indecisive, trying to mosh. Do I mosh here or do I not? The Divine Shield came right after. I think he knew after using that Bolt Power Slide, this wasn't the perfect time. He couldn't really zone them from escaping, so he decided not, which I do agree, because it will be on cooldown if he didn't get any kills, because that Divine Shield can just work as a cleanse.
Sign took Hyper Judgment, Super Judgment, Superman Judgment, whatever you want to call it. The thing
Extra
that lets
range
you...
judgment. The
that's the boring...
something.
Yeah, I mean, but... So, I'm not sure if that's actually the right choice in this situation, though, because mostly it just provides you with extra range, then also the cooldown. But at this point in the game, most of these team fights, L5 isn't going to be as dumb to wander off alone, so it's almost always going to be a 5v5 team fight, right? And there's only a limited range that you can dive alongside the Tyrael that swoops in from an entire screen away. Greymane has a limit to his range on his E. Genji similarly with his E, although his E is pretty long. So I actually think that considering that Tempest has a single support and most of his heals are probably going to go on the carries, I think that Hardened Shield or something like that would have been a better choice in this situation. But
we will see
as
Vala also gonna upgrade in the range. I think it could have been a little bit harder to have the not upgraded Judgment to hit on Vala, or Lucio will be careful in the back line even more now, as they're just AFK from the keyboard. And in 45 seconds, you do have to move, guys.
I mean, my judgment of that talent choice is sort of based on the assumption that Swoi won't make a silly mistake, which is usually a bad assumption to make because all players, even the best ones, make a lot of mistakes in game, especially in the latter parts of the game. So Sign's heroic choice, his choice to upgrade his heroic, might end up working out.
They do move.
Sign gently fingering his R button. He is so tempted to just press that onto Swoi right now.
Well, this top tempo, I don't think any team will be considering this, but after this, that was a close spear. This team fight is for the boss, for the tempo, and it is for the game. That's why both teams are being so cautious right now. Just trying to have vision, have all the information of what's going on around the boss right now. I think Tempest, after clearing this works better for Tempest because they have H82 who has the Haka, can also use the global to join into team fight anytime. So Tempest starts the boss. They do spot L5 going up.
But conversely, as you were saying about the Dahaka being able to defend the bottom lane, Tempest are the ones down with 2 keeps, so that works against their favor.
L5 is going for the core.
Decent decision to take this boss, it seemed, until L5 made a really good decision to rush core. Probably will back off though, right?
They did make the
yeah,
right
they
decision.
absolutely don't need to risk this right now. They are 2 keeps up, almost 3 keeps up even. And just going home, defending the boss would be the better thing to do. With
Seems like they will lose the bottom keep, but for 3 keeps, I'd say that's a fair trade, or a very, very good trade for L5, as they can just out macro this entire game, as all 3 lanes will be pushing super hard against Tempest.
Because this is so late in the game right now, this keep will probably go down. And Tempest will probably try to look for a forced team fight because they don't want to handle the macro game with being 3 keeps down.
They do have Sanctification. Honkana takes so much damage from Sonya. He goes down, but trades for Vala. That's a good trade, SDE. Now Puff, the Twilight Archon, will be continuously doing damage. Same for the Dragon Blade, though. Lockdown doing tons of damage. Chunga surviving the front line as Hyde is just running away at the moment the Dragon Blade continues. Wow, that's a kill for sure.
If it was before level 20, then you would be a fan of this exchange for Tempest, but simply because they have access to Twilight Archon now, even though you take out Vala, there is still plenty of damage on L5 side, especially with Sonya in the fray as well. So Tempest, they're deciding to take the team fight there was pretty telegraphed. That's what they always do when they're severely behind, and 3 keeps to 0 is pretty much the definition of severely behind. So I can't really blame Tempest for making that decision to just force, very clumsily force a team fight 5v5 like that at the core. And they did execute parts of it pretty well, but overall L5 dealt with it very calmly, partly because it was so telegraphed, as we mentioned, and they will be able to take game number 2.
That was a risky choice by Tempest because they knew all their keeps were down. They had to make a move or they will be out-rotated and may not be even able to fight and lose the game, so they had to make